Hello, everyone, and welcome to What's Wrong with the Podcast. Today, we're delighted to be speaking with Jennifer Uchendu. Jennifer is a sustainability communicator, analyst, and founder of Susty Vives, a social enterprise making sustainability actionable for young people in Nigeria. Sustainability work is focused on climate change, ecofeminism, and meaningful youth participation in the Sustainable Development Agenda. Jennifer holds a master's degree in development studies from the Institute of Development Studies in UK. She's a 2018 Mandela Washington Fellow, Bill and Melinda Gates Goalkeeper, and the co-author of the ebook titled A Guide to Business Sustainability in Nigeria. Jennifer, welcome.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here speaking about my work. Yes, I'm the founder of Susty Vibes, which is basically a cool way to say sustainability vibes. I founded Susty Vibes 4 years ago when I was looking for a platform as a young person to do sustainability work in Nigeria. Now, Nigeria is a developing country faced with really priority sustainable development issues. There's poverty, unemployment, sustainability, environmental issues weren't really priorities for young people. So there wasn't a platform where you'd have like tree huggers, people who were really interested in the environment and all of that. And I really, really wanted it. And a lot of people would think I was crazy then, wanting to be involved in that kind of stuff. But Susty Vibes literally just came to me as that idea. But funny enough, we started as a blog. It was just a WordPress blog, writing stuff related to the environment and looking at the then sustainable development goals. They were just launched at that time, looking at them through a young person, a young woman's point of view. For a long time, I had identified with the idea of ecofeminism, wanting to do work for women and the environment. So Susty Vibes gave me that platform to express myself. It was that space, the thing about creating space for social change. So I literally saw a need that was pressing for me, and then I started it. And I remember 4 or 5 months into starting the blog, we decided to have like a readers meetup. We called it a party, and it was a Susty party and a house party, and loads of people came. We're over 50, and it was there I knew that, okay, we're onto something here. There's so much that can be done. I didn't realize that there were other young people who were also interested in sustainability like myself. And that's how we grew to where we are. Basically, we've now grown to a full-blown social enterprise, doing several projects in different states in Nigeria. But it's very much youth focused, very much youth led, very much ecofeminist centric. So there's a lot of work for women development and the environment happening simultaneously. And even recently, we found ourselves even speaking around politics, because a lot of decisions are made at the federal political level. So if our leaders don't realize the importance for environmental sustainability, we'll be stuck. And the world has been stuck kind of for a long time with where we are with climate change.
Yeah.
Basically. So what we're seeing is that there's just so many linkages and intersections with the work we do and every other thing which people would have said was really, really important. Even if poverty, there's a lot of links between how the environment relates to how people survive. So people are more vulnerable when they're in poorer communities, infrastructure and all of that. So it's just been exciting to learn by doing, basically. So we do the work and then we learn and get the experiences. Yeah. Very brief.
No, I love this background like so much, because it also speaks to so much of the aspects that, we believe in, and I guess like have observed through our lives too. Like, I think, having a presence both in Istanbul and New York, and also doing work like sort of all over, we have the firsthand experience of witnessing different cultures and approaches to things.
Yeah.
looking at some stuff in like Turkey, I might think like, okay, in terms of like sustainability, at first maybe US is more advanced, and then I go to Netherlands, I'm like, oh wow, US is not advanced at all. You know, like it really like creates this like context real quick. But also, just because, you know, there are, as you mentioned, so much urgent needs, such as like, I mean, poverty, like hunger, right? Like people are concerned of their day to day, forget a conversation on climate change, but it's really not like that, right? So in the long run, everything around climate change that we're discussing, or, you know, biodiversity or desertification, that in the end impacts your hunger too. So I think like that connection, it's so hard to make in countries where there's so much urgency on like other problems, but at the same time, that realization that if we do not address this, that do not seem urgent to you, it is actually pretty urgent and it will impact your future. Like that awareness is so, so important. And I think that like what you did is really made the conversation more accessible and understandable. Like once you see how that might relate to your day to day, like otherwise, like there are a lot of big terms, right? Like climate change. Like, what does that even mean? Like I'm worried about the food on the table today. But then once you understand how that might connect to your day to day, it's actually pretty powerful and it's hard to ignore. And I think what's important in what you do is like really having an accessible dialogue, a dialogue really on like things that matter to us and how that might relate to climate change or sustainability. So did you find, I mean, I guess like through, because it started as a blog, it was more like your I guess passions and frustrations are everything around the subject, right? I'm assuming. So coming from a personal angle, I'm assuming that really resonated with other like young minds who were actually interested in the subject. So because it was so personal rather than an academic publications, like did you see that happening, or it was like, did you think, okay, because I'm like sharing my like version of this and like it's very personal and it's probably more accessible, did you think that that would resonate? Or like, how was your own interest arose in the beginning too? Like, I'm not sure it's from like academic data, you know?
Well, definitely not academic data. I have my undergraduate in biochemistry, so I mean it's completely different. But I mean, the interest for me is just looking around the environment and seeing that this isn't something people take very seriously. This isn't a Nigerian conversation, even though it should be. I mean, climate change for the longest was a very Western further thing. You know, I remember my mom like 5 6 years ago calling me one day. She's like, how can I tell my friends what you're doing? Like, how do I explain this climate change thing to them? Because it's difficult for them to wrap their head around, you know. And yeah, with Susty Vibes, it was very personal. It was a lot of people saying, even if we want to go into academia, or get a master's, or work in a company, we still need the experience. How then do we get the experience if we don't have spaces like this? So that was that need, that was the gap Susty Vibes was feeling, creating a platform. And that's like our tagline. We say we create a platform where sustainability can be relatable for young people in Nigeria. So the keyword is relatable. If it's not something that's understandable, if we can't use pop culture, everyday language and slangs to explain this problem, then perhaps it's not so pressing. So that's what we made a case for. And to make a case for the solutions not being as complex either, understanding that it's day-to-day living, understanding that it's as big as system change, but we can change our lifestyle, we can change our thinking. And we still struggle with that thinking and mindset problem around sustainability. Something as simple as recycling or just disposing of your plastic bottle properly. We have to do loads of sensitization to the average person. Because we tell them, they're like, they don't just see why they should, like, how does this affect me? But then you break it down, you use like local language, you use everything possible to explain to people that, oh, have you heard of microplastics? And you tell them what microplastic, because you don't want to leave them there. You make them even more confused, and you explain to them the process and the reality of the problem. And they start to see reasons with it. They make commitments on the spot, and that's how the message or gospel in quotes starts to spread. But
Yeah.
definitely it was very, very personal. I've now obviously gone on to do a master's in development, and now I have the academic framing. But when I first started, it was just a passion to make change. You're seeing a problem in your society, and you think the solution can come from a young person's point of view. It wasn't me trying to push or join adults to do their thing. So businesses, governments have a role to play in this solution, but I wanted a youth-driven solution, something that was by young people, for young people, and that's where SustyVibes came in. And we've seen several other organizations spring up after SustyVibes, and it's very exciting to see the different
Amazing.
ways young people are now seeing, making change. They're using different things. So for us, when we started, pop culture was a big tool for us. We're doing loads of
Mm.
parties, loads of movie screenings. For us, we needed to get into the mind. We needed to do that restorative advocacy kind of thing. Like, people need to see what we are seeing and understand why this is even a problem. And we were looking for links a lot. So talk about peace and sustainable development, talk about violence. So there are links to climate change and
Mm.
terrorism, links to climate change and girl-child marriage. Make these links very obvious, because we have examples in Nigeria, and let people see them. So it was really, really interesting when we started, and we've never lost sight of that work that we do, even as we've expanded with several other projects. It has always been the core. Will young people understand what we're doing? Will they be able to tell
Yeah.
someone? There's this thing we say in Nigeria: explain to me like I'm a 5-year old. So you need to explain to someone else like they're a 5-year old. If not, then it's probably not as urgent as you say it is.
Yeah, I mean, as much as it's very much of a need in Nigeria, this is like a global need, right? I think
Definitely.
we definitely do need the academic research. We do need
Mm-hmm.
this like high level, like very complicated or sophisticated conversations too. But when
Yeah.
we're talking about actionable like insights or even like awareness, that really requires um, people to relate.
Yeah.
I often look at like when we look at different industries, um, like fashion industry, as much as it's one of the biggest culprits in like
Yeah.
environmental
Mm-hmm.
pollution, and there are a lot of corruption within the industry itself too, but it also is like quicker to raise awareness when they're doing something. And like
Yeah.
one thing
Mm-hmm.
I'm realizing is like, oh, because like in the end, whether we think we have a style or not, we all have a style, and
Yeah.
we all wear clothes, so
Yeah.
it's a relatable thing, right? But when you're talking about this like high level thing that may be happening to the planet, it's so hard to like relate to
Definitely.
that. So what you said in terms of like using local language, that is also so true, because like, which analogies are you going to use when talking to
Exactly.
someone? Like, one
Mm-hmm.
may resonate with me, one may resonate with someone else. So like, even identifying and breaking that down, that's not
Yeah.
dumbing down the profession. That's actually like really intending to educate people rather than just
Yeah.
like giving them facts. So
Yeah.
I think like that is so cool, and I actually love that you make it fun, like for people to even like remember like what was told to you, like the party
Yeah.
and all the pop culture. Like, if you think of the advertising world, it's all about how they make you feel, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This car and suddenly you're the best person on the planet, like that
Yeah.
feeling. Like, they already mastered this. So like, if this is fun to deal with and learn and do
Yeah.
something, um then it's only going to spread from there. If it's just like
Mm-hmm.
these scary facts, we tend to, there's so much bad news every day too, we tend to sort of like numb ourselves and ignore that anyway. So
Yeah.
there has to be this like positive connection to it too, which I think it's great that you sort of like incorporated that early on.
Yeah.
um I think like, and you always mention youth, and I definitely agree on, well, also, we came from like generations who thought like plastic was the biggest revolution, and then
Yeah.
like suddenly they're like, oh, like maybe not. And then, but sustainability, like environmental protection, those were not big conversations, like even like
Yeah.
30, 40 years ago. So and it is crucial to like sort of really have the concept even like embedded to your personality, so you can't act otherwise, like when you grow
Yeah.
up. So in that sense, like youth, I definitely understand. But of course, like in addition to the obviously governments, like the policy lags, we cannot rely on waiting for like something to be talked.
Yeah.
Like youth movement is so much more important. But what type of resistance, or I guess like barriers, did you face as you started to expand the project scope of SustyVibes? Like what type of, was it like really people acknowledging what this was about, or they were actually open to it and wanted to do some things and you faced different type of difficulties?
I mean, so in terms of getting people to join the community, young people to be part of what we do, because of our branding and culture and community, it was very exciting to join. When we
Mm,
put out calls for people, we get loads of applications, and we'd have to even tell people no because we didn't have the capacity to take on so much. But
mm,
then the success for us is going out to communities and to the streets to make real change. You want to go and do a cleanup and sensitize people, and you want to go back there next week and expect some level of change, if not 100%. I
mm,
think our major challenge was that we weren't getting that. People would easily go to business as usual. People would go back to what they were doing before. People would still argue against the facts and not want to acknowledge it. And that was where we realized that the work is a lot. We need more hands. We need to work with businesses. We need to work. We need more
yeah.
stakeholders. There needs to be some form of enforcement. It needs to be a priority for even the government. If not, it's just going to be a secondary issue that people won't take serious. Secondly, we realize that if you make sustainability attractive for the common man whose issue is poverty or whose issue is hunger, if you make it attractive for them, if you give them a buy-in, a win-win. So for us, it was incentive-based recycling. So we did a lot
Mm,
of a lot of campaign telling people that, oh, if you recycle X amount of plastics, you can get cash, you can get gifts, you can get all of that. And it made sense. It made sense for people's pockets. It made sense for the environment. So finding win-win strategies like that, for us, for the young people, it was that sense of community, being in a family neat, fun space where you have that branding and identity that you're a Susty Viber. That's what we'll call our volunteers. They're Susty Vibers. And it's very cool to have that tag. They use their lapels, they talk about it. They've become really close, and they've gone on to do really great things from just that identity. How then does
sure.
it translate to the average person? A third barrier would be the eco-anxiety and the overwhelm that comes with the work that we do. I mean, climate change and climate catastrophe is such a huge problem. It's so complex. Every day we emit carbon by just living, like we're turning on our laptops, our phones.
Yeah.
There's what, yeah, it's so difficult to not have that guilt and that anxiety about the future. And then young people doing this work, they get a lot of overwhelmed. They're like, can we really make change? Can things really change,
Mm,
especially with climate change? And part of what I've been trying to understand is even eco-anxiety with young people. So during my master's, I sort of put myself in that position to research eco-anxiety because it's such a huge problem. Building hope in young people. How do I motivate people to continue in that positive, optimistic view of life when we know that things are not getting better, they're even getting worse. Like there are no plans to divest from fossil fuel. We still want to be realistic. This is our major source of building the economy. So what are we really going to do? And
yeah.
as things get worse, that anxiety is a lot to deal with. So one of our very last events around it was to have a party to look at climate change and mental health. Talk about yoga, talk about what are the positive things that you're doing, and that community, the climate strikes even came out of that, wanting to take
Mm.
positive action with people and having those conversations. So those conversations are really, really key. So within our WhatsApp groups, whenever we come out to space, we want people to talk about their feeling, because there's nothing worse than having a changed a world that has global warming and then mental health issues at the same time. Like, that's like double. So we want to also address the mental health fallouts that are coming from the climate change conversation. That has been a very big elephant in the room for us, trying to
Yeah.
figure it out. Even I myself, with all of the leading and like having fun and doing your passion, I still get really anxious. Like, is there really change inside? Or are we
Sure.
just doing stuff? So that's one big challenge that we're still figuring out. And it's a conversation that I have now really been involved in, trying to figure out best ways to adapt and even live with the changing climate, because young people are here to stay. So we'll be here for a longer time than older people. So our conversation and approach even has to be different. We have to think of new ways to talk about these things, new ways to manage our expectations, because and
Yeah.
find balance, because we'll often tilt from optimism to complete despair when we
Yeah.
think of the news and the problems and all of that. So it's finding that
Yeah.
sweet spot, because the eco anxiety is not a bad thing in itself, because when you start to think about issues around the environment and want to make a change, it propels you to want to make a change. You're searching things, you're
Exactly.
looking for information, but then what do we do with that energy and that those feelings young people are having? And that's definitely a new focus for me and our work with SustyVibes, because we can't take it away. We can't just be solution centric. We need to create that space for conversations so that our solutions can even be meaningful in the long run, basically.
So true. I mean, it's something that we don't think about often, right? Like, we're
Mm-hmm.
so focused on bringing the solution, and then all these like people who are trying to make progress and push, like there's so many really like deeply entrenched systematic issues or
Yeah.
institutions that things are going to be slow. I think the realization, I like on a day-to-day basis, like, yes, this may take generations, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
we have to, I mean, do we have the time? Like,
Yeah.
is this like this generation, like, even with like human rights movements, right? So many
Yeah.
people died, got tortured, they didn't see the positive ending, right? And they're still
Yeah.
like, well, there are some positive endings, but still we're not 100%, at least
Yeah.
globally, for sure, right? So I think that like recognition, like what I'm doing is for the long term.
Yeah.
um, because like, if we think about it now, like the generations that are coming up and like our current generation, they're already growing up with the awareness. Like, there was
Yeah.
no such thing in the past. So
Mm-hmm.
even if you come to the game aware and conscious of your
Yeah.
like actions, that's already a plus. Like, one is greater than zero. If you do
Yeah.
like one thing, it's better than not doing anything, right? I
Definitely.
think, they also like for like a time, like millennials were made fun of too, like for like, oh, like they want to change the world, like all they care
Yeah.
is about like social impact, and then they're bored the next day. Well, I think that's something like for us and like for all like upcoming generations, that sort of like a self reminder is that it's going to take a time, it's going to
Yeah.
take a long time, and it might look like what we're doing is very minor, but if
Yeah.
everybody was doing that minor thing, that's a huge impact, right? So I think
Yeah.
like that awareness and constant reminding of ourselves is really, really crucial. And also like what you do in terms of like making it fun, right? I think,
Mm-hmm.
and like really having like almost like therapy sessions together of like,
Yeah, pretty much.
in the end, we're all human, right? We can
Yeah.
only take so much. And so
Mm-hmm.
reminding each other, like, okay, like this is better than nothing, like all of
Yeah.
that, like positive conversation and having space for that. That's such a good point and so important. And
Yeah.
what you said in terms of, you like going into communities and like do cleaning and sanitizing, and then like you may come back and see like business as usual. I think that's like it's an issue, I guess, like recurring in different topics in different ways.
Yeah.
If the change doesn't happen from the local, like if, like a party comes in, they help you out, you like
Yeah.
feel in the moment, and then you're like supportive of it, and then when they leave, suddenly it is really easy to go back to your old habit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess the question is like, how do you, like, what are ways, or like what type of things that you've been like ideating on, how can this happen, like for it to happen from the local, somebody from the
Yeah.
local really needs help,
Exactly.
right? So that's the
Yeah.
communication part. But then how do you sort of like, I guess, make sure it's reminded nonstop, like it lives in the local even when you leave? Like what are some things that you were exploring there?
Well, obviously, before COVID and lockdown and us not
Yeah.
having to go out and being stuck on the digital phase, we considered tapping into our community and asking people in our community, where are the problems that you're seeing? It could be your street, it could be, blocks of flats
Mm.
around you. You then set it up. So we say we're youth led. Don't wait for the management team or the leaders. You set it up, create a budget, tell young people around you, tell your friends about it, and then you guys start to make it a culture. You want to clean up, then start cleaning
Yeah.
up. You want to do a screening, start it. So it's basically empowering people. There's this idea of you're giving them the power. You're not just saying,
Yeah.
oh, I have the power to make change. You're making it very fluid and accessible to say, we want to be youth led, so young people should then lead this change. You can now do it on your own as a Susty Viber. You have that
Yeah.
covering, and our community and identity is fine for you. Think of the best way. You know your community more than we do. Think of the best way to approach this issue. Would you need, for example, a religious leader to come with you? Is that someone they respect? Then let's get him
Mm.
on board. Would you need a celebrity, a musician? Would they listen to him? Would he need to do some partnership? So basically, we don't want to impose our ideas, and that's
Right.
the fear of adultism and copy and paste solutions. You don't want to just impose a Western idea or a top level idea. You want
Exactly.
people to
Doesn't sustain
come up.
anyway. Yeah.
Exactly. And then for us, because the journey of Susty Vibes has been one of experimentation, gosh, we keep trying, failing.
Sure.
Sometimes we flop. Sometimes
Sure.
it's really amazing. We're like, oh, wow, we did that. So paying it forward and telling other young people who work with you, be free to experiment. Let's try different things.
Yeah.
Particularly as there's the urgency of the matter, we can't just be stuck in one way because there's no one size fits all. So making room to just experiment, try different things and see what works. Basically, like you said, one is greater than zero. So if we have just one person on board, one person saying, oh, from today onwards I would not throw my plastic bottle to the drainage or something, that's good for the environment.
Yeah.
So for us, that's how we start to evaluate change and success, when we can make incremental progress. Basically, we can't change the world in 1 week or in one
No way.
year. We know that for sure. So yeah, that's how it has been so far, and that's the kind of theory of change we're now adopting. To take it as slowly as possible, but experiment. Be open to
Yeah,
change
sure.
and be very open. Yeah.
And also growth from within is what you're describing, right? Like
Yeah.
the so like giving local leadership, like empowering them and then
Yeah.
guiding them, instead of just like, okay, so now you should do this, but more
Yeah.
like you identify what is the most urgent problem in your community, and then this is the way you may address it. You may also want to try this, like whichever
Yeah.
your community. I think like figuring out those influential people in the community, like that's also really valuable.
Yeah.
And it really goes back to what you originally said on finding the local language. The local know best the local language, right?
Yeah.
You guiding and like to what you're doing in terms of like raising awareness and educating, and then these like locals adopting, the idea, and then they sort of like expand. So that will take time, obviously.
Yeah.
Like that
Yeah.
sort of like
Yeah.
requires local growth and like customization in what they're doing. Yet that is the only one that would sustain. Like anything that is top down, or somebody coming in and doing it for you and then leaving, like all of that is just
Yeah.
like a patchwork thing where things easily go back to normal. um
Definitely.
I mean, in like different industries, we see like the models that only work are the ones that work with the local network, and those
Yeah.
are the ones who are actually be able to repeat. Because also, like, I can imagine as a community, once you, let's say, like for you, maybe the street was the priority, you clean it up, and once you do that, I'm sure there's a feel good component to it. And
Yeah.
then you're like, "Oh, what about this too? Like maybe we should
Exactly.
do." So that is also like organic growth from local.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
to go back what you said in terms of like incentives, I guess that also ties to um like cultural needs as well. Like when you live in an environment where it's like everything is about like today's urgency and the short-term solutions, like finding food for tomorrow, right? Like
Yeah.
there's no 6 month, 1 year planning into your like future, or like even businesses function like that, especially in developing countries where
Yeah.
like what do we look like in the short term. So the incentive model is like very short term results for
Yeah.
the person. So that is definitely, I think, super interesting in terms of like how to find local solutions. Like in
Yeah.
not even not all developed countries, some developed countries, you may just educate people and maybe they're on
That's
board.
fine. Yeah.
But I can even see, like, in United States, from states to states, it will
Mm-hmm.
differ how people respond. And I'm
Yeah.
sure there will be a lot of states who would like the incentive
Yeah.
to act on things. How do you see, how can you collaborate on that with, I guess, on a broader term? Like, do you collaborate with businesses so that they will support SustyVibes on allowing for those incentives? Do you collaborate with other institutions or nonprofit organizations?
So basically, there's already a budding recycling culture in Nigeria, also led
Mm-hmm.
by young people, social entrepreneurs. What we do, because we have the numbers in terms of young people volunteering and wanting to go out to the streets, so we team up with these recyclers. So they need subscribers and people to give them plastic. So we go out together with them, and then we're taking names of people, telling them, oh, you can give your plastic and get incentives in return. And it's like a win-win for the recycling company, a win-win for
Hmm.
us, because we know that directly we're going to help get the environment to be cleaner. So we definitely always team up. And that's one thing I probably skipped in my introduction. Susty Vibes has been a product of collaboration. Oh, like several, a lot of working together, like a lot of working together, because young people have different interests. There's
Yeah.
there's church. They want to go to the movies. So we've kind of keyed into all of those kind of partners, the different stakeholders that young people will be interested in, and finding people who would help us achieve our joint mission. So
Hmm.
for example, you want to reach young people or a young audience, we can work with you, to do like your CSR project. It's a win-win
Hmm.
for you. Basically, you're reaching young people, we're also getting to do our work. So definitely we would always ask for we would always work with people in terms of funding and getting sponsorship to do our events and all of that. However, there's a clause with that, because we're always very careful. You have to be thorough and clean. You don't want to fall the risks of greenwashing and being with an organization that isn't really about the environment.
So
So we're
true.
always very thorough about the organizations we work with. Wanting to see their sustainability reports, what they're about, how do people perceive them, and if they are not, for example, we won't work with an oil company or a fossil fuel company. That's completely away from what we would do. Like,
Yeah.
if people don't perceive you as an organization that truly cares for people, for the environment, for human rights and all of that will probably advise you on maybe this is something else you should do. Maybe work on your perspective and try to do more stuff than trying to claim you're an environment and all of that. So definitely, yeah. And I think that's one thing young people are able to do. We're able to ask for accountability and put people in check. Greta does that a lot, in her speeches, basically called speak truth to power. And that's really, really interesting.
I know, that's what I was gonna say. I think I don't even know if this started out with millennials, but even I think Gen Z and onwards,
definitely
more they do call out business right away, if you're faking it, right? And I think social media, as much as with its vices, there are huge benefits of bringing in transparency into things and how corporates are messing up. So I think there many corporations for so long now has used sustainability as a marketing thing on their end, and then you look at their work and you're kind of really. But then I think the new generations are really calling them out, and that creates whether a customer or is loyal to you or not, or whether you're gaining customers. So I think that drive, and we always say real solutions are only feasible by educating the end user, right? And when demand from the user, the provider has to provide. So that push, that calling out, I think is sort of the great thing is it's pushing corporates to really walk, right? And I think there's even something to when you're sort of assessing the companies for collaboration, to sort of invite them into the game, ones that are not sustainable. You can be okay, if you want to collaborate with us, it has to be a 10-year thing instead of a one-off, because we want to make sure you do something.
Yeah, you're in it. Yeah.
But it's I think in any discussion we do, collaboration, and especially diverse collaboration, whether it's international or multidisciplinary, that seems the way to go for to bring solutions in any industry. What type of other collaborations you would like to see more, whether that is in Nigeria or globally in the space, that you think might be beneficial?
Well, one thing I'm seeing a lot more of, it's academic institutions opening up that data and academia, their ways of doing things, and then supporting young people in their ways of doing things. For example, with the climate strikes, so for what I saw is there were universities who were very supportive, happy to give insight, all of those theoretical concepts that are often boring, trying to translate it into youth movements and community movements, and telling the young people what they should look out for, what they should know, seeing research going into youth and social change in a way that isn't tokenistic. You're giving youth the power, and you're recognizing that they have the ideas within them to make this change. I sort of like those kind of synergies and those realizations that young people in themselves can think, children, even young children can think, and they can make change. So that space opening up a lot. It's happening in Nigeria, although much slower than it's happening in the West. But the fact that youth movements are coming up, and organizations in their meeting are saying, okay, we have to watch out for the youths. We have to look at what they're doing, and it's happening across sectors, even in banking and fintech. Startups. A lot of young people are starting up with these really disruptive ideas. It just goes to show that there has to be a lot more partnership where you don't feel superior to them, but you see them as people who can also bring meaningful value to whatever change.
The young generation is your future customer, future employee, and all of that. So if that generation is coming with this awareness, not prepping is just a poor business decision that you're going to pay for later on. We were interviewing a professor who was saying this academic year is in the university is the first year ever where we had climate strikers as a group of students. It's the first time a freshman student coming in, this is the generation of climate strikers. So that should be different. Even the questions they ask in class, right? I don't think when I was in college, I don't think I was aware of anything. Maybe I knew about
recycling. That was pretty much it, right? But it's a much
Yeah.
bigger conversation, and such a different way of even like thinking to your like academics topics that you're discussing in
Mm-hmm.
class, like, and asking questions that really relate to climate change or biodiversity.
Yeah.
That is so interesting to me.
Yeah.
And it's just dumb if businesses don't realize that that's their like
Yeah.
new customer
They'll
base.
catch up, definitely. I mean, they have to sell, they have to be in business. So they'll
Exactly.
definitely catch up. Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, trying to push boundaries and make progress is not an easy task. You face a lot of difficulties.
Yeah.
What would be an advice or advices that you would give to young people in any field who want to make change?
Well, I guess the first thing is a lot of times we have ideas of what change can look like, but we think it hasn't been done before, it's too dumb, it's too unserious. But oftentimes, young people have convictions very strong of wanting to do stuff and thinking it to try. You want to try, you want to do something, make an attempt, make a move, write something, have a
Yeah.
plan, just make a move and try something. It could even be in music, it could be in anything, it could be an artistic expression. The world as it is with COVID, with climate change, needs more. We need all hands on deck. So we need everyone trying to throw in some light, make some change. So there's a lot of problems, a lot of complexities, a lot of things we can't even figure out. So if
Yeah.
you figured out something as a pathway to make some change, by all means, the world needs you. So don't feel like it doesn't make sense. Nothing makes sense right now. So yeah, why not? So just help us out, and the world definitely needs you. So because sometimes I think, what if I never started Susty Vibes? What if I just kept
Yeah.
saying, oh, I don't have a master's degree in sustainability, people aren't going to take me serious, and all of that. So from my example of just trying stuff, and it's not like we've become the best or we've changed the world, but we see success on a daily basis. We see the recognition, we see the value we've been
Yeah.
able to create, and that in itself is something. So definitely try, do something, be open to start something. You can pause, you can not have it all figured out, but just start, just do something, make a move, definitely. Tell
Yeah.
someone about it. It's a very
Exactly.
good
That's what I
first
was gonna
step.
say.
Yeah, tell someone about it. Because I think if I didn't tell my friend who helped us create the blog at that time, we probably would never have started, because I don't know how to create a blog, or I didn't know how to
Mm,
use WordPress at that time. So tell someone, tell a friend, or tell someone about it. And there's so many inspiration, like right now, with young people making change and doing things. So
true.
tap in from that inspiration. It's sort of like our time now, and there's this burden or responsibility or hope put on young people to make change. So definitely show or throw some light into this very complicated world. Yeah.
I love them all. I love all the advices. I wish more people told me that when I was alive. Any updates or announcements or news you want to share about Susty Vibes that is coming up or we should be on the watch?
I mean, there's always something with Susty Vibes. I know we're planning tree planting. We want to. So there's been obviously the pandemic. There's
Yeah.
been the NSAS protest. Young people coming together to protest against police brutality in Nigeria. There's
Yeah.
been like lots of movements and violent outtakes. Lots of back and forth with the government. So at the moment, we as environmentalists, we've been thinking of ways we can plug in, create a community that restores, because we feel like a lot has been lost from us. Young people have died in the process, properties, and several people have just been shattered and traumatized by the process. So we're thinking of a tree planting exercise, where we can just all come out and plant trees as a form of, like, we're still in Nigeria, we're still Nigerian. We believe that Nigeria can change, and we believe that the movement would actually make sense at the end of the day. So definitely, we want to plant trees in parts of Nigeria, And yeah, just follow us, Susty Vibes, on Twitter and Instagram. Look
Yes.
at our website and what we're doing. Yeah.
Yes, and yet another example where youth is coming together to
Definitely.
really
Oh, it's been so
protest
inspiring.
against.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a healing aspect to tree planting together. It's like a, collective therapy all together
Yeah.
that looks more into the future.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Thank you so much,
Thank
Jennifer,
you,
and
Pina.
we will certainly be in touch.
Definitely. Thank you all so much. Bye.
That is this week's episode of What's Wrong with the Podcast. Make sure to visit our website, podcast.what'swrongwith.xyz, and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Google Podcasts so you never miss an episode. You can now also watch our podcast on YouTube. You can find a link in the description below. If you found value in this show, we would appreciate if you could rate us and leave a review, or you can simply tell your friends about us. For more details on our guests, follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Don't forget to join us next week for another episode. Thank you.